Right now on the Daily Debrief, R. Kelly arrested on new criminal charges in 2 federal courts. Also, a teacher who admitted to sex crimes with a 13-year-old student gets the minimum sentence. How does the case compare with others? And the U.S. Secretary of Labor resigns over fallout from a case he handled as a prosecutor involving an alleged millionaire pedophile. Plus, a frantic 911 call in the killing of a Tennessee 12-year-old. Testimony from a homeless woman could be the link that sends an accused killer to prison.
Well, I did hear him ask if God would forgive someone for killing someone.
The Daily Debrief recaps the day in court. It's Friday, July 12th. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Debrief. Michael Bryant in studio here in New York. The rest of the panel will be with us in just a moment. R&B singer R. Kelly is under arrest on new charges tonight. Kelly, seen here during an earlier state case in Illinois, now faces 2 federal indictments, one in New York, the other in Chicago. The new cases accuse Kelly of racketeering, forced labor, and sexually exploiting children. They also accuse Kelly of producing child pornography and of engaging in sexual activity with girls under 18 years old without disclosing a sexually transmitted disease. Kelly's attorneys said the charges involve decades-old accusations for which Kelly has been previously acquitted, but did not elaborate. Tonight's panel is here early to discuss these developments in the R. Kelly case. I'm joined by Judge Brandon Birmingham of Dallas, Attorney Michael Troiano of Las Vegas, and Attorney Michael Bryant is here with me in New York. So, Michael Bryant, I was not surprised that this was coming. Was anybody?
No, I don't think so. I mean, some people would suggest, hey, they're piling on, but let's face it, there's a lot of piling on to be done. There are so many folks out there that, as a result primarily of that television show, feel much more comfortable coming forward, and they are, and I don't think this is the end of it.
Judge Brandon Birmingham, legally, how might this play out? Do we have a state case that might maybe be put on hold so that the federal case could roll along? What do you envision happening here?
That's typically what happens here in Dallas. Whenever the feds get a case, they usually take it first. They have more resources, more time, and the sentences tend to be a little bit stiffer. So that's probably what you'll see happen in the R. Kelly case.
Exactly. Michael Troiano joining us from Las Vegas. The accusations are piling up against this guy. What's the defense? Do you have any suspicion where the defense might go with this?
At this point, it is hard to tell, as the indictments were just handed down yesterday. So it's going to be interesting to see exactly what the specific allegations are in according to the facts of each particular charge. So we understand what he's being charged with as far as racketeering, sex crime, as well as his overall past behavior. But as a specific avenue of defense, I think we're going to need to wait to see what details come out.
And sometimes that takes time to put together. Gentlemen, we'll be back to you in just a moment. Sentencing today for the Arizona teacher who admitted to sex crimes with a 13-year-old student. Brittany Zamora pleaded guilty to sexual conduct with a minor, public indecency, and molestation. The judge did not allow independent video recording equipment inside this hearing, but instead released recordings from a courtroom camera. The quality was poor, so we're just going to bring you sound of a few key moments. Zamora's plea deal with prosecutors suggested a 30-year sentence, but the judge gave her 20 years. That's the minimum. Here is some of Brittany Zamora's statement to the judge.
I'm going to start off by apologizing to the victim and his family. I'm sorry for any undue stress or pain that I may have caused. I'm ashamed of my actions and am completely remorseful and truly regret what took place. I'm known to be a responsible, caring, happy, and thoughtful person. My actions were completely out of character for me. As an adult and teacher, I am meant to set an example, and I did not follow according to that expectation. Prior to this incident, I have been an amazing teacher and citizen. I started programs while teaching to help stop bullying, teach girls about nutrition, fitness, create fundraisers to help with autism, and help families in need. Filled 25 plus desks with school supplies each year, and even won Teacher of the Year in 2016. As far as a citizen goes, I've lived my life respecting and trying to obey every law. I am not a threat to society by any means. On the contrary, I have tried to help our society as much as I can. This includes helping out the homeless, volunteering for the city, and giving time to assist with church programs. A life that I've been working so hard to set up for a successful and bountiful future. I would do anything to re-enter society soon and for a second chance. This sentencing is not only taking decades of my own life and experiences away, but those of my loved ones as well. As stated earlier, I never want to hurt anyone, and it tears me apart to know that I have, and I'm deeply sorry. Going forward, I would like to attend counseling and all other required courses, obtain a new degree, and seek new employment. I have already relinquished my teaching certification. My hope is to rejoin society a better and more grateful person. Your Honor, I know the state did not take my medication and assessments into consideration, but I hope you can. I am a good and genuine person who made a mistake and regrets it deeply. I ask that you please have leniency in regard to my sentencing, that you see me as a person with a hopeful future, and not just another number or case.
Here's how Zamora's sentence compares with similar crimes in other states. Teacher Alexandria Vera pleaded guilty in Texas to a charge of aggravated sexual assault of a child. She was 25, he was 13, the same age as Zamora's victim, and she was sentenced to 10 years in prison starting in 2017. Vera claimed the teen's family supported the relationship. It all came crashing down, however, after she became pregnant and eventually aborted the child. In Florida, Stephanie Peterson received a 3-year sentence after pleading guilty to sex crimes with a 14-year-old student. Her plea agreement called for a 5 to 10-year sentence, but her defense team reduced it further by arguing the defendant was bipolar. And Montana teacher Stacey Dean Rambold pleaded guilty in 2013 to raping a 14-year-old student who committed suicide 3 years after she was attacked. A trial judge sentenced Rambold to 1 month, saying the victim looked old for her age, but the state's highest court intervened and changed the sentence to 10 years. Rambold, however, made it out on parole after 3 years. So, onto the panel one more time for discussion on this case. Judge Birmingham, you are the man among us who has to sit in judgment of others. It's a difficult job. What's your take on the defendant's statement in the Zamora case? How did you take her words?
Well, she seemed genuine, and it's you should not just ignore the way that somebody has lived their life, but you also cannot ignore the facts and circumstances of the offense. After all, we don't just grab people in off the street and sentence them. I think the most aggravating factor in this case was the involvement that she had at school with this student, sort of brazen and with impunity, even using other students to act as a lookout, even performing some of these acts during class. And that's a pretty particularly aggravating scenario that I'm sure impacted the judge in this case.
Exactly. Michael Troiano, we have different states with different sentencing laws. We just ran through the gamut, though, of how other states have dealt with similar matters. This sentence seems relatively harsh in comparison.
Well, every state, as you said, is different as far as the laws of which are implemented and the sentence structure that they have. I personally feel that it was a fair sentence. We're in an age and day now where we are a little bit more mature with our understanding of sexual contact between minors. Long gone is the days where, well, hey, he was a boy, he's not really a victim, this was a part of growing up. This woman, Miss Zamora, is a predator. I thought that her speech to the judge as far as sentencing was concerned was an abomination. It sounded more like a college admittance letter than an allocution or an apology for her behavior. I feel that her defense team really let her down and should have had her focus more on her mental health and sexual issues instead of going into her community service. It was too egregious to even utter those words.
You know, I'm going to have to agree with you on that one, Michael, because it really bothered me for exactly the reasons you articulated. Michael Bryant, Zamora says, look, I turned over my teaching certificate. I can't teach again. I can't be involved in that under my agreements. But she wants to continue teaching fellow inmates. What possibly could go wrong with that?
Yeah, sounds like a good idea. You know, I think it's important to remember that she knew what was going on here, and she took a plea deal that said she might get 30 years. So I think she had reconciled in her own brain that what I did was wrong. I'm going to pay the price. Maybe 20 years wasn't what she thought she might get, but she knows it's going to be 30. So she did okay.
Yeah, Michael, and exactly while I have you here, what's going on with the full body mugshot? Like, who has those? Like, who takes those?
You know, they had that photo and the more typical photo, but I don't know, maybe it has something to do with the type of crime. They want to have full evidence of what she looked like on the day she was arrested. This is how they picked her up in the desert, just like this.
Oh, you know, that's a new one, too. That one was a little bit bizarre in my book. Anyway, panel, gentlemen, we'll be back with you again as the broadcast rolls along. Meanwhile, Labor Secretary Alexander Acosta has resigned amid fallout from his handling of the case of accused millionaire pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Acosta was the federal prosecutor involved with a so-called sweetheart deal for Epstein when Epstein was accused of crimes in Florida. Epstein served only about a year in state jail and avoided federal punishment. Prosecutors this week filed new charges against Epstein for other alleged conduct in New York. Acosta at first refused to resign his new job, but today he finally did. He and the president spoke together.
He made a deal that people were happy with, and then 12 years later, they're not happy with it. This was him, not me, because I'm with him. He's a tremendous talent. He's a Hispanic man. He went to Harvard.
Over the last week, I've seen a lot of coverage of the Department of Labor. And what I have not seen is the incredible job creation that we've seen in this economy. More than 5 million jobs. I haven't seen that workplace injuries are down, bucking a 3-year trend. Workplace fatalities are down, bucking a 3-year trend. That we had the safest year ever in mining, the lowest number of fatalities ever in mining. I have seen coverage of this case that is over 12 years old, that had input and vetting at multiple levels of the Department of Justice. And as I look forward, I do not think it is right and fair for this administration's Labor Department to have Epstein as the focus rather than the incredible economy that we have today.
And still ahead here on the Daily Debrief, 2 trials involving the deaths of children. The first in Tennessee, the second in Georgia, where a husband and wife were forced to hear from the sister of the girl they're accused of killing. Those 2 cases when we return. A Florida jury has decided not to recommend the execution of a convicted murderer who took the stand and said he was a homicidal maniac who wanted to be put to death. Scott Nelson blamed his probation officer for setting him off so badly that he killed Jennifer Fulford, a personal assistant to a wealthy man. He called Fulford, quote, collateral damage because he needed money. Nelson will still serve life in prison, a place that he testified he absolutely hated. Now to the case against a Tennessee man accused of murdering a 12-year-old girl. Roy Coons Jr. is accused of killing 12-year-old Joanna Arteaga by beating and strangling her. Arteaga was home from school because of a roller skating injury. She texted her mother that someone was knocking on her door at about 4:15 p.m. She thought the person was the man who mowed the family's lawn. Her mother found her dead 2.5 hours later. Here is a 911 call placed by the victim's mother and sister.
911, what is the address of your emergency?
Hi, my sister, we just got home. She went home alone. They killed, I think, they killed my mom, my sister. I don't know what to do. My shoes.
Ma'am.
My shoes.
I can't understand.
Okay, somebody speak Spanish. Somebody speak Spanish.
Hold on, stay on the line with me, okay? We're gonna get somebody to speak Spanish.
Hello, my name is Angelica, Spanish interpreter.
Tell me exactly what happened.
Bueno, señora, habla un So my daughter is 12 years old. I went to work at 12:30. I worked from here at and it seems that somebody came into the trailer, broke in, they choked her, and it seems like they raped her.
Okay, all right. Stay on the line with me, okay?
Prosecutors say they have the defendant's DNA on the victim's windowsill, on the victim's body, and on a cigarette found outside. Plus, this next witness says the defendant made odd comments after deciding to take up residence in a homeless camp.
I did hear him ask if God would forgive someone for killing someone.
Did you answer him, or did Moses answer him?
I did.
And what did you tell him?
I said, yes, God would forgive you for your sins.
And had you and Moses, were you open about your faith and your spirituality when you were around with Ray?
Yes.
So he would have been aware that you were a religious person?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you just hear him say that the one time?
That I remember.
That you couldn't specifically remember? Okay. Do you remember whether or not anything about when how Ray was acting before he left your camp?
I just noticed he was needed to get somewhere. I heard him say, "Oh, I gotta go to my dad's and then see you later," or something. Or he might not see us again, I think he said.
Were you ever present to hear him make any statements regarding California?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Could you share what those conversations or what those statements were about California?
He just asked if we would go with him, and he was excited about it.
The state is arguing those statements by the defendant are a confession and proof of an attempt to flee. And now to the trial of a Georgia couple accused of murdering their 2-year-old foster child. Joseph and Jennifer Rosenbaum face a mix of murder and other charges related to the death of Layla Marie Daniel. Authorities say the little girl died from blunt force trauma to the abdomen, a cut pancreas, and other abuse. The defendants say the girl died accidentally by choking on a piece of chicken, and that her injuries were the result of lengthy efforts to try to save her life, including CPR. The victim and her sister seem to have bounced from foster home to foster home, according to a series of witnesses.
When you first got Layla, were you also, when she first came to live with you, were you also the person who would bathe her or change her?
Yes, sir.
At that point, did you ever notice any signs of abuse when she first started coming to live with you?
No, sir.
Now, did you ever help change or bathe Millie?
Yes.
And on those occasions when you helped change or bathe Millie, did you ever see any signs of physical abuse with Millie?
No, sir.
Did you ever observe any injuries to Millie?
No, sir.
And after Layla left your home, did you ever have any other contact with her after she left your home?
No, sir.
The victim's sister took the stand and described what she and the victim endured.
You said Jennifer would get mad at Layla about a lot of things. Do you know what those things were?
I know that she got mad at her for a lot of things, but I don't really know what they were.
Okay. And when Jennifer got mad at you, what did she get mad at you about?
Me not getting dressed fast enough.
Millie, when you wouldn't get dressed fast enough and Jennifer was angry, what would happen?
I would get a spanking.
And when you would get a spanking, where on your body would you get a spanking?
On my butt.
What did Jennifer use to give you a spanking?
Her hand.
Would Jennifer use anything else to give you spankings?
A belt.
And when Jennifer gave you spankings with a belt, where would you be in the house?
In her room.
Did Layla ever get spankings?
Yes.
And who gave Layla spankings?
Jennifer.
On what part of Layla's body did she get spankings?
Same place.
And when Layla got spankings, what room did Layla get spankings in?
The same room.
Is that Jennifer's room?
Yes.
And when Layla would get spankings in Jennifer's room on the butt, what would Jennifer use?
Same things.
Is that the hand and the belt?
Yes.
And when Layla was getting spankings, where would Joseph be?
In the room.
And what would Joseph do?
Nothing.
Would Joseph say anything?
No.
And when you went on car rides, was there something that you weren't supposed to do in the car?
Sleep.
How come you weren't supposed to sleep?
I don't know.
Were there things Layla wasn't supposed to do?
Yes.
And what were those things?
Sleep in the car.
What would happen if you slept in the car?
You would get a spanking.
And did you ever get a spanking for sleeping in the car?
Yes.
Did Layla ever get a spanking for sleeping in the car?
Yes.
And when you got the spankings from sleeping in the car, where were you? What room did it have or place?
In her room.
You said her room. Is that Jennifer's room?
Yes.
Let's bring the panel in one last time on this case. Michael Troiano, the big question here is whether this is accident or whether it is abuse that led to murder. Look, they keep saying choking on chicken. Where's the evidence of it?
Absolutely. It has not been presented at this time. And what's really going to be important is the determination made by the jury when they compare the forensics the breakdown of this child's injuries as to the parent's story and how the defense lays that out. And so far, we have yet to hear that.
Exactly. Of course, it may come when we get the defense case in chief, but the defense really hasn't been able to bring it out of any of the witnesses that the prosecution has called, including the EMTs, saying, you know, look, I really didn't see any evidence of anything like that. So that's the excuse. We'll see what kind of defense it mounts. Judge Birmingham, legal question here. We have a husband and wife, Joseph and Jennifer. They have the same attorney. That usually rings danger bells. We've talked about it a little bit. What's your opinion?
Well, you've got to be very careful about a conflict of interest. You know, normally if you are on different sides of the aisle, you know, you're pointing fingers at each other. But apparently, the judge has made the determination that they're not going to have conflicting defenses, and so they're allowed to have the same lawyer.
You know, and I think that's even more strange, bizarre, maybe even suspicious based on the testimony we just heard from the sister. There's a child up on the stand basically saying, okay, one person is hitting me with a hand, a belt, and then the other one is watching. That's the sort of testimony that's ripe for a split defense theory.
It certainly could be, but remember, ultimately, everything that they're going to be judged on is what happened on that day, and the stories may or may not match the physical evidence, and that's what we're going to have to see.
Michael Bryant, I don't know about you, but the testimony for me in this case, and it's just a horribly sad case, there are a lot of institutional failures around this when you have a foster child dying. But that testimony of that sister, I mean, kids usually don't get up on the stand and lie about things like this.
Yeah, I mean, it was heartbreaking, of course. But this is a little 7-year-old, 4 years old at the time, and she testified better than many adults might have over some really grueling moments in her life and her sister's life. So it could not have been more powerful, and this jury, I'm sure, was riveted and got a lot out of that testimony.
You know, and then there's the question, as a defense attorney, do you try to basically say, well, you know, has the child been coached and everything? I mean, maybe some defense attorneys would go there. I don't know if I would have the guts to do it, Michael Bryant.
I think the defense did the right thing, and that was they said, hey, it wasn't all horrible in this house. There were parties and there were amusement parks and you did things that were fun. That was probably the best way to go rather than attacking this little girl.
Exactly. Well, we're going to wrap up the debrief. We've had a lot going on today. Great panel, Michael Troiano, Michael Bryant, Judge Brandon Birmingham. Glad to have you all on the broadcast. A reminder to those of you watching along with us that our live trial coverage will pick up at 9 o'clock Monday morning with the cases you just heard and others starting with the new week. The debrief will be back at 5. Have a good weekend.